Well, welcome everybody. We're glad to have you here today. Today we have a great panel of industry experts. And what we wanted to do today is bring us to a knowledge as professors to where is technology today. And I think one of the things that even in the industry we would often say is really many of us are behind where we think things are at, even in the industry space. And I think as we get together, and these are three people that I love learning from, because whenever I have a conversation with these three and others in our field, I keep consistently realize we're really further ahead than I thought we were. And so that's why I wanted to take the time today to visit with three panelists about where the future of sales is actually happening right now. We're in it. And so I think my panelists, I'm going to have them each introduce themselves. And I'm going to go with Roy Raanani from Chorus.ai. And he's coming to us from Switzerland. I'm so jealous. And he was the founder and president. And then we have Jen Seeger with Microsoft. I'm going to describe Jen as what most people would call enablement, but I love that Microsoft calls it strategy. She's a strategist instead of an enabler, which I think makes a lot of sense, which means that she's really at the cutting edge of driving demand gen for a huge part of Microsoft in the SMB mid-market space, which is just some of the stuff they're doing is amazing. And then we have Mary Shea, who has made a fun transition. She's been an analyst for quite some time with Forrester and has produced some amazing reports, and has just recently moved over to become an evangelist over at Outreach, which means she basically gets to do whatever she wants. I think isn't that what evangelist means? So Mary, I will start off with you and do the introductions for yourself, and then head back around to Jen and then Roy, and then I'll ask the first question.
Super. Thanks so much, Howard. And it's great to be here with Jen and Roy and the rest of the group virtually. And it's so funny because my mom asked me, well, what is an evangelist? And I said, well, it's kind of like what Prince Harry's doing. You get to do whatever you want. And I really love the role. And I have to thank my bosses, Manny Medina and Anna Baird, for working with me and helping me craft a role that really is tailored to what I love to do and where my strengths are. So as this role continues to mature at Outreach, I'm really focusing on the things that I love to do most, which is conduct and deliver thought-provoking research that looks at the future of buying and selling in the business world. And then also I continue to look and stay very closely in tune with the sales technology landscape and what's happening within that landscape as technologies like AI and automation continue to mature. I'll be working with our commercial and product teams to add more differentiated value to some of the market-facing discussions, and then also to make sure our product roadmap and our ecosystem of partners matches what our customers tell us they need, and even things that they don't even know that they need yet. So it's absolutely a dream job, and I'm so happy to be part of the team and part of this panel today, talking about the things that I love.
Thank you, Jen.
Hello, everybody. Jen Seeger. As Howard said, I am responsible for strategy and programs in the digital sales team at Microsoft. I'm part of the small, medium, and corporate part of the business. And we have a number of different engines look after the unmanaged customer space up into our corporate and enterprise customers. And really, in a nutshell, my job is to help our sellers to be effective. I think about all aspects of that process, from their tooling to the compensation models to how we ready and enable them and train them, how we support them and retain them within our team, morale, all kinds of things. So driving community calls, but it's a really fun job. I love it. Experience a ton of explosive growth within the digital sales profession at Microsoft, and just always looking for opportunities to take things to the next level. I'll also talk today a little bit about the partnership with marketing. Big part of my role is to kind of own that sort of handshake with our marketing organization, because that is really one of the keys to success here at Microsoft in digital sales. So really, thank you for inviting me onto the panel. Excited to participate.
Great. Thank you. Roy.
Hi, everybody. Roy Raanani. I'm thrilled to be here with Mary, Jen, and Dr. Dover. I'm one of the founders of Chorus.ai, and when Howard reached out saying that he wanted to have a conversation about the current state of technology in sales and the explosion of new data streams, it's something that I've been very passionate about for the last 6 years. Sales specifically, I'm passionate about because the thing that matters most to me is creating options for people. So not being forced to make decisions in your personal life. And I think that sales is so empowering for people because it lets them take control of their livelihoods. And it's a place where I think there really is, for the most part, a meritocracy compared to so many other professions. And so I've been very passionate about how I can contribute to that. And with Chorus, 6 years ago, I had a very strong belief that there was going to be an explosion of new data sets that was going to be empowered, or sorry, not empowered, but kicked off by more conversations moving digital. And so the vision was that conversations are one of the most impactful things that we do as people and as professionals. And as more conversations move online over platforms like Zoom, Teams, GoToMeeting, et cetera, for the first time ever, we could capture them and we could deconstruct them into data and start to understand what's actually happening at scale and what is the difference between some of our top performers and everybody else. And that was a black box that we could never tap into. And so it's been a tremendous journey helping create the category of conversation intelligence over the last 6 years and see it turn into something that is not only helping businesses better understand their customers, but also helping salespeople understand more about themselves, more about how top performers are doing what they're doing, and empowering them to take their development and their learning into their own hands. So just very excited to be here and to get the chance to learn from everybody else on this panel.
So I want to kick off with, before Mary left Forrester, she dropped a beautiful report on the world, and so very kind of her to drop me that report too. So I appreciate it. And it was called, it's called the Sales Technologies Tech Tide. And in this report, Mary and her team actually said, well, there's going to be 4 spaces, right, that we need to maintain certain concepts, we need to invest, we need to experiment, we need to divest. And so it's interesting that as we talk today, we have we have panelists that are specifically in the area of invest. Funny that Mary moves to a place where her team felt they should invest. So in the invest category, conversation intelligence, customer success, revenue intelligence. Mary, I want revenue intelligence defined for a 2-year-old soon. Sales engagement, sales training and services, and user-generated video. And to experiment would be intelligent virtual assistants. Boy, talk about a scary area that the bots go bad. And then the divest, which we talked about offline, is sales social engagement, which is going to cause all types of people in the world to hate you, because of all the investments that people make in social. And Jen, I want you to tell us whether Microsoft is still tracking SSI, and does it have an impact on sales when we get to you? So I'm going to let Mary kick off here and tell us a little bit behind this story, and what are the key takeaways that you think would be relevant to this audience?
Yeah, thank you so much. This was an amazing piece of research, and just to give a little bit of background for your audience, I partnered with about 6 or 7 different analysts across Forrester and Sirius Decisions. We acquired Sirius Decisions as well. And we worked on this report for about 4 or 5 months. So it was kind of a magnum opus. We also conducted quantitative survey research with sales technology buyers and put that in the field. So it was really a combination of the quantitative research as well as our own analysis and understanding of the space. So the Forrester Tech Tide, we looked at 15 technologies, as Howard said, and recommended to the market, to our customers, whether they should invest, maintain, experiment, or divest. And it's not surprising that with the, 13 of those are in invest and maintain, which is pretty heavy, given that sales technologies are still relatively new. And when I started at Forrester as an analyst in 2015, and this is sort of correlates with what Roy was saying when he started Chorus, the sales technology landscape was just starting to blow up. Before that, you just kind of think about Salesforce or CRM or some of the or Dynamics or what have you as being the crux of the selling organization. And right around 2015, sales technology started to have a moment. And we've seen a lot of really innovative technologies come to market. Conversation intelligence is certainly one of them, which originally I think started as a tech category and now is really more moving towards more of a functionality or capability within a larger platform. So you asked about some of the key trends, the key takeaways from the report. I think first of all, we're seeing that sales technologies are having a moment. We are in an environment where remote and digital selling is probably going to happen even in a post-pandemic world. 80% of the time, both Forrester and Gartner have put a stake in the ground, and McKinsey and all the other consultants have made those types of predictions. So it's more essential than ever before to have the right sales tech stack in place. As the various innovative technologies start to mature, we're seeing a movement away from these innovative point solutions towards technology buyers really wanting to get more value from a larger core platform and their platform provider. So we just recently launched at Outreach this past last week at our big industry event, 3 new products that are going to provide more horizontal and vertical value across the buy cycle, as well as with personas across selling across that cycle and more senior management. So looking at collaboration tools, and we also have our own conversation intelligent functionality called Kaya that will help sellers engage more effectively and provides in the moment coaching. So we're seeing a movement to point solutions. We're seeing a new category called revenue intelligence be really, really hot, and that really focuses around automatic data extraction around some of these behavioral activities between buyers and sellers. And I'll go out on a limb here, and hopefully your Dynamics colleagues won't be too upset with me, Jen, but I guess I get used to people being upset with me when I was at Forrester, but we really see SFA and Salesforce in SFA and CRM sort of becoming more of that system of record and not so much the primary system for the front end activity that a seller is going to do, but rather that system of record for all the data that's going to get extracted and uploaded automatically from some of the really exciting sales technology solutions that are out there.
So let me ask a clarifying point, because I know what you meant, but I want to make sure that other people understand. Can you help us understand a point solution? Mm-hmm. Because to me, when I first went to industry events, I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. And now I know what it means, but to the native who is not understanding, help us understand the point solution versus a complete solution.
Yeah, so you start to see point solutions in the early stage of innovation. So those types of solutions are solving for one unique type of business problem or outcome. So in the example of conversation intelligence, they're simply providing, rich data extraction via natural language processing of that conversation, and then going through and automatically providing insights to management. And in the case of Kaya, in the moment coaching. So that's just sort of focused around one area, sales social engagement or social selling tools. Those tools, whether it's, Everyone Social, Hearsay, or any other different types, Hootsuite as an example, focused on exclusively helping sellers be more effective engaging socially across the range of social channels with their prospects and customers. We're starting to see those now get absorbed into larger platforms that are supporting marketing sellers and the buyers across the entire customer lifecycle. So as an example, Seismic, which focuses on helping sellers quickly access digital content and deliver that in a customized way. They just acquired at the end of last year Grapevine 6, which was a point solution provider focused exclusively on sort of the social selling use case. So point solutions are going to focus on an individual use case. Platforms are going to help sellers of all shapes and sizes across the entire customer lifecycle be more effective and efficient and have rich data extraction back to the firm.
So I'm going to jump over to Roy and Jen. I already know a lot about what you're thinking and what you can tell people. And I think they'll be surprised. But Roy, I'm going to come to you and say, obviously now, so the good news is conversation intelligence is in the invest quadrant according to Forrester. So I'm going to give you a moment to address the point solution versus total solution. What's the current state of conversation intelligence? And do you see it as a standalone, or do you see it as, I mean, Mary just talked about the fact that these things are going to come together. Kind of what's your thought there on what's the current state of conversation intelligence?
Yeah, so it was so Mary, I'm gonna say this with all respect in the world, but clearly I think I have a bit of a different perspective on it.
Well,
I think that sales engagement is a fundamental piece of technology for a limited part of the organization. And so I think that Mary's macro point is bang on, which is that organizations are looking for platforms that help them integrate things across the entire organization. They don't want to have, a lot of small vendors that are each targeting a small piece of the pie. I think that the place where we probably differ is what is that key leverage point that's going to deliver the most value to the organization. And I think the difference between something like sales engagement and conversation intelligence is that for somebody like an SDR, which not every organization has, you could easily justify a $100 per seat price point because all day, every day, they are emailing and calling prospects trying to create pipeline. The challenge, of course, becomes that it's a meaningful change to workflow and the way that they do their work. And part of, I think, what makes it so powerful is a trend that I'm seeing, which is technology is enabling organizations to operationalize their processes in code, which is very powerful. If you think about it, it's not just, here's a slide that talks about how we do things. It's we're going to embed this in code, and this is the way that we're going to make sure that everybody in the organization is executing according to these best practices. And so if I think about, what's been really impressive about an Outreach or a Sales Loft, it's that they've been able to grow to be a $100 million business just focused on the SDRs. And SDRs are folks that they're new in their careers. You can tell them, this is how you're going to do the work. This is the process that you're going to follow, etc. The challenge, of course, becomes how do you become a platform for the entire organization? And if I'm a 40 or 45-year-old account executive that's been selling for 20 years, and you're going to ask me to learn a new piece of technology, change the way that I work, and so on, that's a big ask. And it's also a very different piece of software and a very different value proposition because I may only have 3 interactions in a day. I'm not going to be sending, 50 or 100 emails. And so I think that these platforms need to think about what is my value proposition going to be to all of the CSMs, to all of the account executives, and so on that have very different roles and very different workflows. And so they have to tackle that problem. With conversation intelligence, I think one of the reasons that we've seen it explode over the last couple of years is because it's the exact same product for every person in the organization. If you're an SDR, you don't change anything in your workflow. You use Outreach, you do your calls, you do your emails. Chorus will capture that and analyze it. If you're an account executive, you have your meetings. You don't change anything about your workflow, but we're going to capture it. We're going to analyze it. We're going to make that information available to the rest of the organization. We're going to put that information into CRM, and same thing for CSMs. And so, if I look at Chorus, and hopefully I'm not, sharing anything that I shouldn't be, but, our Net Promoter Score is 70. We are the second highest rated piece of software on G2 globally. And the number one piece of software that we're very close to is another conversation intelligence platform. And when we look at our net dollar retention and our expansion within customers, it's 95th percentile in software. Which is, north of 150% net dollar retention. And the reason is that once it lands in one part of an organization, that same piece of software is relevant to everybody. And so I think that the question, of course, is, I think, by the way, Mary, I think that you're right? So the point is, I think that you're right. I think that the hardest question to answer is the timing. Right? Which is, with these new technologies, and I think that Outreach has experienced this as well, 50% of what you're buying as a customer is software, and 50% of what you're buying is expertise. How do we transform the organization? How do we do the change management to embed this into our processes, to train our people? What are the best practices? And a big part of the reason that you work with an Outreach or with a Chorus is because, we can tell you, hey, we've worked with Zoom, we've worked with DocuSign, we've worked with these, incredibly high growth companies with world-class teams, and here's how we together figured out how to implement and operationalize this and generate these incredible results. And so let's all kind of move the industry forward. And so I think that, much like in CRM, if you look at Salesforce's market share, it's still tiny. Right? There's still so many companies that don't even have CRM implemented. I think that there's a question of, what segment of the market just wants the bare bones, in which case, hey, a platform with very basic, capabilities that give you the foundations are going to be good enough. And, Outreach probably experiences that with a Mixmax or with an Apollo or whatever else. And, what are the organizations and the demands where they want expertise? And how quickly is this going to play out? Is it going to be a 5-year thing, a 10-year thing, and so on? So sorry for taking up so much airtime, but it's such an interesting question.
It's funny, without intending. Now, Mary, I didn't know that there was going to be the intelligence release, but I want to bring Jen in, because here you've got one of the things that Jen really does have is that they are Microsoft. And so at the end of the day, everybody who develops a point solution, Microsoft could program it and embed it, right? And that's an interesting thing. And so Jen, tell us the current state of demand, Jen. And really, I think from a sales and marketing perspective, if I'm sitting, because I've interviewed your people, it's really amazing where you're at. If I'm a salesperson sitting, you've heard Mary talk about sales engagement, and we've got CRM, which is the company record. Then you got sales engagement, which automates and helps manage that sales sequence, that sales cadence, and really moves from documentation to observation and assisting, actually, which really solves this problem of, hey, get it in the CRM. No, just engage with the engagement platform. It automatically goes to the CRM. And I think, Mary, we could ask the question, do you even need a CRM? Sorry, Salesforce friends and Microsoft Dynamics. And then, of course, Roy's talking about the fact that we can listen in on all the conversations, as well as with the new product that Outreach has just brought out to bring that all in. So Jen, tell us where Microsoft is at, kind of more internally, not necessarily commercially, right?
Sure. So of course we use all of our own products. I would say CRM and Dynamics is absolutely crucial. We operate at scale at Microsoft, having thousands and thousands of sales representatives talking to hundreds of thousands of customers every single day. it's crucial that we have a place to kind of be a system of record in terms of that engagement that's happening, just so we don't step on each other, to be honest, and create a poor customer experience with multiple people calling in at the same time for the same thing, that type of thing. But maybe I'll just kind of explain a little bit about the journey, the way that things kind of work. It really starts, I said in my intro, that one of the keys to our success is the relationship with marketing. So within the digital sales organization, we are all about responding to digital signals. And we have a strong partnership with what we call the Global Demand Center at Microsoft. It's a centralized marketing team. They essentially centralize all of the marketing campaigns and engagement with customers. And what they do is they'll go out, they attract all of these signals, and all of those signals go into a central system where we take all of that insights around, what content are customers engaging with, who started a trial, what is going on with their consumption, what trials did they download, what website did they go to, bringing all of those insights and data into a central place. And we've made a huge investment in making sure that we are constantly, refining our process for looking at that data, investment in machine learning and AI to kind of say, all right, which customers are ready to talk to, and that's really important. I think, Howard, when I first met you a few years ago, we were talking about some of the innovations there with machine learning and just saying, hey, we moved away from this concept of we're going to score leads based on they got 10 points for a white paper and 20 points for a trial. Moved away from that entirely and moved to a system of using machine learning to look at all of that engagement and learn from all of it and say, oh, this one looks like it is like a high priority one versus that one over there based on, over 200 different attributes of the lead that is coming in from the customer. And that right there is super crucial in terms of just making sure that we are focusing our seller time on the best leads at the right time when the customer is ready for engagement. So that's kind of where it starts. As those leads flow in on the sales side, we are very focused on a connected sales experience. Sellers complain bitterly about having to go to lots of different tools. So I would agree with Mary that you need to kind of have an experience that's sort of an end-to-end experience. Now that experience, we connect all the dots for the sellers and try to make it seamless for them. But within our demand response organization, which is focused on kind of primarily the unmanaged customer space, the sellers, they wake up in the morning, they get their coffee, they sit in front of the computer. And what they'll do is, they hit next lead. And we have a system that then says, okay, this is the next lead that is available in what we call the prospect store that is ready to have a conversation. It will then guide them based on the type of lead that it is into what is the next best action. Should I email this customer? Should I call them? Should I connect with them on LinkedIn? What's the right action? And of course, we use machine learning and whatnot to tell us what to do. And then it just will take them down a sequence of follow up with that customer. Of course, we have a conversation intelligence platform as well that takes a look at we'll record the conversation, guide the seller through the process with that customer, and then the next steps as well following the conversation. It's a great tool, from a coaching perspective. Each of our managers might have 10 to 12 sales reps, and they don't have time to necessarily sit in on lots of calls and do shadowing like we used to in the early days when I first joined the team. Instead, they may have the ability to kind of listen back to those calls and kind of give their sellers pointers, which is a really important tool because I think it was pointed out earlier, a lot of the folks in our demand response organization are early in career. This might be their first sales job, or if we're lucky, we get one of Howard's students from the University of Texas to come in and start talking to customers, highly trained folks, right? Essentially they have that guided experience for them. And that has accelerated the amount of customers we can reach just because it takes a bit of the guesswork out of things. It helps with driving consistency. So Roy kind of talked about like being able to embed, your sales process and make sure everyone is doing the right things. You can kind of do that with these platforms, which is super crucial. And, it helps us, stay connected and not lose track of those customers. If they engage again, then maybe it'll pop up higher in their queue, that type of thing. So it's a fantastic set of tools. On the corporate and enterprise side, we have made some different investments in tooling for our sellers, and have a process whereby, you say you have a portfolio of accounts. At any given time, your accounts are doing lots of things, engaging with content. And what we've done is we have scored them from a marketing engagement perspective. We have all kinds of different AI-based models that look at the propensity to purchase. Of course, we have all these products and we have all these sellers who are trying to sell these things. And so it will guide them to what are the right things to be talking to this customer about. And it pulls in, a 360 view of the customer in terms of, what are they licensed on already? When are they coming up for renewal? How do they buy? Who are the people? So we pull in all kinds of data from LinkedIn and other sources to give us a 360 view of the people in the organization, who's engaged, who can we contact, and who's kind of starting to pop in terms of their engagement with content. And again, that platform is fueled by marketing engagement as well. We do a lot of investment in account-based marketing at scale as well. And so if we kind of see, okay, this is our set of customers that have a high propensity to buy Microsoft 365, we do a surge marketing investment to generate demand, pull those signals in. And now what we've done is we've set up different sales forces to respond to those signals, based on solution area, focus. And, it's a pretty cool system. I feel really, every day excited that we get opportunities to kind of be spending time innovating and looking at this space. But I'd say, there's just still so much potential to kind of make things even better.
I think one of the fun things about talking with Jen, and I each one of you we could just spend an hour with and we'd have a blast. And that means that we've got a great panel. Whenever I talk to Jen, I always end my conversation with, and I won't do it to you today, is what is the KPI that you've experienced double-digit growth in the last 30 days? And not only does she have the answer looking backwards,
Wow.
She has the projection moving forward. As she just pointed out, there's so many opportunities for her to get more efficient. She already knows where she's headed. And so I just want to kind of bring this down. I've talked to Jen many times, and I've even interviewed some people on her team when I was in Dublin a couple of years ago. And to just make sure that everybody who's listening understands, they really do have a system where literally, and Jen, you correct me if I'm wrong, and Mary, I'm coming to you next. So you sit down and you literally are in a command-like center that literally is ranking all of the millions of leads sitting in the Microsoft ecosystem, and literally is prioritizing that in real time to tell me what is the number one thing I could do right now as a human to engage revenue for Microsoft. And then I do it. And if it's an email, it literally brings context of what I maybe even should be saying into the messaging. It gives me hints. And when she talks at 360, by the way, some of this is several years old. It's not new. I mean, when I talked in Dublin, they literally said, when I talked to some of the people in the seat, they said, this is so cool. I go to lunch and I come back and it's rejiggered. It recalibrates, it's live, it's constant, it's constantly moving and shifting. And so this question of, are we still in static scoring versus dynamic scoring? The answer is we can accomplish dynamic scoring. Are most people in static scoring? Yes. But in fact, most organizations I talk to, they're in static scoring. Dynamic scoring is very, very complicated, but obviously at Microsoft, They kind of leaped ahead there. Now, I think the beauty of this, Mary, is, and I'm going to kind of load this question and go around the horn here, okay? Is you wanted to say something, but I needed to get everybody in. Not everybody, because whenever I talk about Microsoft, when I give presentations, and if I'm keynoting, I always have to remember, and I have to be honest with the audience, they immediately say, yes, but I'm not Microsoft.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have programmers available to fix everything. And so to me, I look at where Microsoft is and say, that's where the field is going to get to. Microsoft can be there now because they own the software, they own the programmers. Jen does amazing things. It's exciting to always talk to her. But not everybody can get there. And I love what Roy said, that sometimes we just need someone to listen to the call, and that's it. And that's really valuable across the org. So I'm going to load this for everybody because we're coming up on time. Talk about sales engagement and what outreach does, and what are the research questions in kind of the future? Where are we headed? What can we do with the data we're getting? Where are we headed? And if we can do our best to do about a 2-3 minute per person, then we get everybody in.
It's difficult. We're such an introverted panel, Howard, unfortunately, but this is so fun. You're absolutely right. We have so much more to talk about. So first of all, I want to say a couple of things. One, I've been following Jen and her work and her career for many years as when I was a Forrester analyst, and absolutely she and the team are doing amazing things. Secondly, I'm going to say, Roy, I'm going to go out on a limb and bet that you and I are actually not that dissimilar in our points of view. But given that, we're representing different companies here, there's a little bit of tension in the system. But
we need to boil it down to 140 character soundbite.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we probably see things fairly quickly. It would be interesting to pull up in 6 months and see, what kind of consolidations happened in the marketplace. But I'll leave it at that. I also want to say, I do think I give CRM a really hard time, but it is essential. I just think that as we move forward, revenue team members are going to be operating on a different layer. That's probably not CRM, but CRM is that essential system that is capturing the customer data and ensuring that everyone's coordinated and we all know who's on first. So I just wanted to clarify a couple things. Then let's talk about sales engagement. There's this misconception, I think, and I think Roy's competitive position sort of pulled that out of me a little bit, that sales engagement is only for the SDR, for early cycle reps involved in early cycle activities. And actually, that's not the case at all. Challenging, when I wrote the sales engagement wave in 2020, I really did push on the vendors on the space to say, look, you need to do more to develop capabilities and workflow and user interface for sellers of all shapes and sizes across the entire range of the buying cycle. And so that is happening, but admittedly, sort of the two leaders in the space, SalesLoft and Outreach, did start out being very, very SDR focused. But right now we've got a suite of solutions that support sellers that are mid to ladder cycle reps, closers, and we're getting to the post-sale place. We'll also be seeing sales engagement really come up with vertical focused workflows. So I think the days of saying sales engagement is just for those early cycle reps and high velocity activities is well behind us, particularly when you see that 80% plus of B2B sales will be happening in a remote digital fashion in the future. So just a couple of points there. I don't even know if I answered your question, Howard, but I just felt like I had to get those points in.
Well, so I'm gonna go to Roy, and then we'll circle back, Mary. So Roy, given that we just went virtual, the whole world went virtual. Weren't you guys ahead of that curve? Isn't that nice? Because managers couldn't listen in, and all of a sudden, conversation intelligent platforms became from nice to have to better have, right? The only way you could actually hear what's going down. And I know I've talked to you about once I did that with my students, I was like, oh my gosh, they really aren't learning a whole lot. And that's been beautiful to me because I lived in a false sense of where my learning was. But when I listened to live calls, I went, oh, wow, I've got to bring that forward. So to me, that was the easy, quick hit. What can we do with all this data? Where are the research opportunities? Sure, there's industry things, but what are the things that you think we could maybe figure out or look at that aren't the easy stuff, the kind of academic work that maybe could be done or needs to be done to help move the field forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I had some fun earlier today thinking through it. But before I forget, Jen, if it's okay, I'm just going to refer to you as Demand Gen going forward. I'm sure you've heard that before, but I think, Howard, you just mentioned it really briefly. I think the question that I've wrestled with since founding Chorus is understanding what is in the seller's control and where do you actually get, what investors would call beta, right? Where do you actually push the differentiation? And so, the obvious thing is if I'm selling, if I'm selling hamburgers and I'm selling it right in front of an all-you-can-eat buffet in Las Vegas where people are coming out, I'm not going to sell very many hamburgers. And I think that, the point that Jen and Mary had brought up earlier is that there's a lot of work going into intent signals and data to understand, who's ready to talk to us and who's ready to have a conversation. And what I would be extremely curious to understand is how can we take the variability in performance and disaggregate it into what is a result of better targeting, better intent, what is a result of effort and quote unquote following the playbook, what is the result of better, higher quality interactions, what are the things that are truly in the seller's control? Because, one of the things that kills me, and obviously we work with hundreds of go-to-market organizations of various various capabilities and various positions along that maturity curve, is, you see phenomenal people that are struggling. And it's very hard for people to answer the question, well, what is it that I'm not getting the right data? I'm not getting the right intent signals. I don't have the right templates. I don't have the right cadences. I'm not getting the right coaching from my managers. I'm not getting this. I'm not getting that. And so that for me would be fascinating. And I think the challenge for researchers is twofold. Number one, like you said earlier, there are very few Microsofts in this world. And so I think that the majority of organizations don't have what I call the bottom of the pyramid, right? Which is the foundation and the basis for building a stable, structured, go-to-market engine. And that to me comes from having, be capturing the right data in the right formats, accessible with the right systems and processes built on top of it. And so, depending on who you're working with, do you work with a Microsoft where you can say, hey, we can actually, academically answer this question and probably get as close as we're going to get to the right answer? Or is it something where, we need to find proxies and, approximations by looking at the data that these real organizations have in the real world? And how do we help them figure it out so that they can move the needle on performance and be focusing on the right things? I think that's the one that I would be most fascinated in. And the second challenge for researchers is I think that this data is very protected. And so, finding the right organizations that are saying, we are open to sharing this data with a research institution and, anonymizing the results and so on and so forth. But finding that partner that can help you get to the answer, I think, is a second important piece of the puzzle.
So I thank you, Roy. Thank you. I appreciate the fact I can tell you thought about that. Roy's a good friend, and I love his mind, and I miss our serendipitous run-ins where we can talk about substantive things. One of the things I want to throw out there, because I don't want us to miss this in the time frame, when we think about sales engagement platforms, when we think about Microsoft's data and we think about conversation intelligence, we have a massive voice of the customer. We a lot of times the sales orgs were focused on the machine, the sales machine, and how the sales machine moves the revenue needle. And yet we have never had more voice of the customer sitting in our databases that actually tells us what's really going on. And I think, Gartner, sorry, Mary, Gartner, Gartner's kind of been looking at this, jobs to be done and the way in which a customer really needs to get to a certain level. And it just really, we can listen and figure out where the customer is, what they're thinking, what they're saying. So Jen, with that, where do you think researchers could spend time that maybe industry just can't take the time to do it because it's just too big of a lift?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's around, like, I could not agree more in terms of the data and the listening engines and things that are out there and all this data coming in even through conversation intelligence. Like, how do you take masses of data and actually make it actionable? That's something that I think that a lot of companies struggle with. We struggle with. Okay, we've got all these insights. We've got, hundreds and thousands of sellers. How do we aggregate like what they're hearing, what our tools are saying, what, customers are saying through our platforms, and bring it back and make it something that we can actually mobilize around and act on. And I think it's really hard, right? And I think kind of researching that and understanding that would be incredibly helpful, useful. I think in terms of, something that's on top of my mind is this last year, obviously the world has changed, right? And we've gone into this place where all of our sellers really are digital sellers because no one was going out and seeing their customers in face-to-face, or at least everyone was a remote seller, right? I don't know if they were digital, but I think that, as we transform back into maybe call it normal life here post-COVID, are people going to revert back? Are they going to still be expecting, people to come to them face-to-face, or has the way that customers buy shifted for good? So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see how that plays out. And I would say too, like, we're always trying to struggle, like, when is the right moment to talk to a customer? And so just how do we get better still at that? I mean, I feel like we have great insights today, but like, what are customers really going to expect? And I think a lot about, where is this industry going? Where are we transforming? What's next? And I think that customers expect, end-to-end digital journeys, where everything is kind of like smart. And, when you're just thinking, oh, I want to talk to a salesperson, something pops up and says, hey, do you want to talk to somebody right now? Or, hey, can we answer a question? And that it knows the right time when it's not annoying. And so I think it'll be fascinating post-COVID to just look at this space and say, has it changed forever? Or are people going to go revert back to their old ways? That's what.
So as we transition over to Mary, one of the things that UT Dallas, we've taken our video trove of role plays, and with an NEC grant, we're collaborating with Duke University right now with a PhD student out of Duke, literally looking at the body movement and correlating it to the outcome and the movement of the sales journey in the meeting and the outcome of the meeting. Very, very cool stuff that my colleague Kai and Norris Bruce at UTD are working with some people over at Duke. And, I'm the subject matter expert from the video and reminding them, hey, this is how a sales meeting actually goes down. And they're using these technologies. Once again, we have massive data, right? Including the movement of the body. We're not talking about facial. We're talking about the actual movement. And these are actual meetings in a lab that we've had. But the next step of this technology could easily move into all the data capture we just had. Yeah, it's very preliminary. It's very exciting research, but just one idea of what can you do with the data. We've got a lot of data, right? And so, Mary, with that, given everything we've got going on, what can academic researchers do that are just, listen, industry is going to hit the low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
But what are some of the substantive issues that just are going to take time?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is all about the data, and I think we can all agree on that. And I can't remember who coined the phrase that data is the new oil of the 21st century. It was, I think, a Brit mathematician, and then Gartner jumped on that bandwagon. But, it really is going to completely change the way we interact in a buying and selling situation. So the more data that you can capture, whether that's body movement, which is absolutely fascinating, we're capturing sentiment data now. So instead of just looking at someone reply, quantitative vanity metrics like reply rates or respond back or what have you, we're actually starting to look at the sentiment in some of these communications and extracting that data to help us better understand pipelines and forecasting and which deals are really going to come in and not come in. I think it's also interesting as you think about conversation intelligence as a capability. You're going to start to look at like facial recognition and sentiment in even less definite types of ways. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I think the research that you described on sort of the interactions is absolutely fascinating. To Jen's earlier point, I don't think we're going back to the future, so to speak. I think most of us really understand that we're at a watershed moment, and what COVID did was accelerate a lot of different trends that were already in play, whether that was, I'm less interested in meeting in person and I want the efficiencies of remote, to, I want to just sort of engage by text and renew a contract that way, or I want to connect up in digital, or I want to go to G2 Crowd or some other site to see what my peers say about a technology. These trends were already well in play before COVID hit. And so that's one of the reasons I'm pretty confident that as we move forward, we're going to continue to move forward in this direction with more digital and remote types of activities. Millennials are half the global workforce, very comfortable. Digital natives are very comfortable engaging on technology and using it to get the efficiencies. And digital immigrants are as well. So I think it will be really interesting to see how this all translates. But even if you do want to go out and meet folks in person, three models of work are emerging right now, right? Which is work from anywhere. That's just a small collection of companies. Hybrid model, where you're seeing about 2/3 of businesses really embrace this type of hybrid model. And then primarily at headquarters, where maybe your brand is really dialed into your physical presence or your physical location, or you have a highly collaborative type of environment, where we'll see about 1/3 of business doing that way. The other thing we've also seen is that buying committees are really dramatically increasing in size and expertise. So even if you wanted to go to headquarters, half of the people in the meeting would be zooming in anyway, right, Jen? So, I think those are the things we're finding. So the more that the academic community can help industry and practitioners with industry better understand some of these nuances around engaging in a remote setting, I think those types of research projects would be really beneficial.
So I'm going to tease out. Thank you so much, each of you, Mary and Jen and Roy. I get the advantage of doing GSSI, and then later in the month in June, I do Sales Educators Academy. We'll be doing that live, where I get to keynote on technology in the future to another group of academics. So I get 2 swipes at this. I get the full stage by myself in the next one. And one of the things that I've recently seen is, connecting the dots. And I think Jen's already talked about this concept, and Mary, you've talked about it too. And Roy, I'm sure that you guys are kind of looking at this from a data scientist approach. The tone and right, a lot of the machine learning around using, like IBM's tone analyzer to go against a script to then determine, looking facial recognition and There's just a lot of things. Personality profiles there's some work that Scott Gillum is doing right now with XIQ, literally reverse mapping deals based off personality entry points and tying it back to the challenger customer research around mobilizers, and the type of person, whether they're going to move the deal or stop the deal, and literally using personality profiles. And then, of course, right now these are in the early stages, but it's already moved into scale. So, I mean, we're already seeing, once again, the future is now. I mean, when we hear something 3 months ago, it's going to get automated into the system. As Jen points out, she can move forward quickly because she can just bring it into the system, right? She's already got the data and everything going on. So some of those leaders are going to immediately adopt these technologies and concepts, not as a point solution, but as just bring it into the overall solution. And I think that's where the future is. Not everybody can do that. And that's why we're going to have lots of different possibilities. So I'm going to go ahead and thank everybody for participating.